Okay, perfect. So this is Dan, and he works at Automattic, and he's very well versed in WP-CLI, and that's what his topic is about. So why don't you start sharing your screen and let's get going.
All righty. Let's see, where is, I published my slides as well. And
Okay.
I can share the link in the meetup, on that meetup page, if that works.
And by the way, I'm gonna mute everybody except Dan. So
1 second.
let me unmute you, Dan. Let's see.
I'll move this over.
There we go. And if you guys have questions, I gave you the ability to unmute yourself. So if I don't know if Dan's going to take questions in like while he's doing the presentation, but we only have 40 minutes because this is a free one. But I do have a second room, so if this runs over, we can move to that second room and go from there. So
just for the record, I can give you like I have the pro version, so we can, if that helps.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and use this one since everybody's in here.
Yeah, sure.
And then if we have to go to another room, we can do that. So, all right, Dan, go ahead, man.
Sounds good. Yeah, and I'll try and keep it within 40 minutes. I hadn't timed this or anything, but I'm basically, I mean, you know, it's getting started. So I'm just covering the basics, just getting installed, and then some commands that I've found useful over time, just, you know, different management and things I've found that were helpful. So, so yeah, again, my name is Dan Robert, and I work at Automattic, and welcome. All right, so also I do want to note, like, almost everything I'm covering is available. The handbook's great. Like, I reference it all the time, and so that link there is, you know, if you can just go in there, and I'm pretty much going to cover the installation part from there. I'm not going to go into like all the different ways you can install, or I'm not going to go into every single operating system. I'm just going to go through the Mac and Linux approach, and then a Windows is there in the docs. You know, just slight variation of like where you install the FAR file and everything. So, so the recommended installation is just use curl or wget, and then download that FAR file with this command. And that's basically your whole script, really, the application. That's it. But yeah, so you should see, so if you want to, you execute that FAR file, right? So you run PHP, assumes you have PHP installed in your system. And then you should get output similar to what you see there. But that command, just executing that file and like making sure you're in the same directory as that file every time, isn't probably that ideal, right? So we just want to make that available globally as the WP command, which is like, this seems a common practice. I suppose you could name it something else, but makes sense to do WP, right? So you know, you want to change the permissions on that to make it executable, move it somewhere that's available in your path. And then once you have that done, you can just type from anywhere in your system, you can just type WP info or dash info, and you'll get the same command or the same output that we saw previously. And so that basically gives you all the information about your current installation of WP-CLI. Same with commands, like they're all listed out. I'm not going to go through all of the commands. I'm just going to go through, you know, a bunch that I've personally found useful through using WP-CLI. So, but there's a ton of them there. There's a lot more, even like the commands that I do go through, there's a lot more like different things that you can do that I'm not going to go through, but definitely recommend checking out what's in there. I still reference it all the time. Also because I have like no memory, so I have to go back. What was that command again? Yeah, so this is a handy one, just installing WordPress, right? So if you have, you know, I guess just here I kind of pretend we have like a local environment, so I put the URL for localhost. But this here is all like one command. If you're not familiar with this, it's just backslashes. Just I'm making it easier to read, so it's not going off the line here. But in here we're downloading core. You want to make a config file, and then you pass it the name of the database you want it to be called, and then the user for your database. So you know that really just depends on your environment, right? If you have a database user locally, you know, if you're using MAMP or Laravel Valet or something like that, you just make sure you got the proper user set up there. And then you run WP-DB create, and that will create the database based on this information here, right? Now, once you have that database created, you can run install, and you pass these parameters, right? So I got the URL, that's where, you know, where it's going to show up, site title, and then your user, admin password, admin email. Probably don't want to do example, especially not in production, but I do that for local stuff though. So you don't have to like download stuff manually, and like, you know, it's faster. And the nice thing about that actually is, actually I'll just go back here. Like these are all just shell commands, right? Like it can be scripted and you know, in like a bash file, right? And you can just, and I do that too. I can share a link as well. I just have like a little a gist or whatever it's called, but like, you know, with just a bunch of, it's just a WordPress install script that I run, and I just execute that script, and it does a bunch of stuff that I add to it, like more than just this, but it's the same idea, right? That way, instead of going and downloading WordPress and then, you know, running through the install through the admin and everything, you're running a script and everything's done in just a minute. So some handy commands for managing things and you know, beyond installing. We got theme management, and this command, WP theme list, it gives us a bunch of useful information about your currently installed themes. So all the themes you have installed, which one's active. So here we've got 2020. You know, if any updates are available, and then the version that they're running that you have installed. And then some common commands you might use to, you know, manage your themes beyond just listing them out. Like here we got, you know, well, now that you know what themes you have available to, it's nice to just list them out, at least to know what you're working with. But, you know, we have the install command, and this can also be broken into two different commands, right? We don't have to pass it the activate flag. We can say, you know, just WP install 2016 and then WP theme activate 2016 if you want to activate that afterwards, or activate a different theme that you already have installed, right? You know, this is pretty self-explanatory. We're deleting this theme, and then we can update all of them at once with the all flag, or alternatively, we can just name the theme that we want to update. Like if we just want to update 2017, say, we don't have to have all. It's nice if you see a bunch of out-of-date themes, you can quickly update everything. Same for core. I didn't actually cover that in here, but you can do WP core update, that updates your core right here from the command line, and then we'll see that in a minute, but you have the same, basically the same thing for plugins, right? We're going into plugin management now, but this is the same idea, except for relating to plugins instead of themes. You know, plugins installed, status, and then you know, there's updates and stuff. So you have the same commands really for plugins here too. There's a lot more than this, again, like I said, but these are just pretty common, handy commands that you might use instead of going into the admin, especially if you're just doing some stuff and, you know, you're coding and like, oh, I don't, you know, jump back over to the interface, log in, whatever. You can just handle all this stuff quickly, or script it, which is nice. So we can do a bunch of stuff with content too and posts. So I've never personally actually created a post here, but I'm sure there's a lot of good use cases for it. Maybe you just want to test some stuff or script some things out, make a bunch of, say, default test posts when you fire up a site or something like that. But you can do that. And then this one's handy. It just outputs a list of all the titles. And the table format is default, so it will look like this table here. It's kind of that's like the default format, but there are other formats, as I'll show you later, that that you can output to as well. Then we can delete a post, and then this one's kind of cool. So you delete all your posts, but the thing to note here is like you can have like a nested command right here, right? So you know the post delete command takes the ID or list of IDs that you want to delete. So here, and then you're outputting all of your posts with the post type post. That could be page, that could be a custom post type, whatever you want to delete. And then you want to do pass format IDs, which outputs all just the IDs for all of the posts here. And then once this is run here, and that list of IDs gets passed to the post delete command. And that's just like an example of like you can do a lot of cool things with that. I've done a bunch of things like going through and listing out things and deleting them or not deleting them or running whatever action on those lists of IDs. So it's pretty handy. And here's just like a random kind of edge case example that I've actually gotten a request like this before, but I had somebody come to me that wanted a list of all the images that were within a certain date range, and they wanted them in an CSV file that they could input into an Excel sheet. So so basically doing that, I'm listing all the posts. I'm using just getting the title and I don't know how to say this, gid, anybody? But in this case, it means it's a global unique identifier, but globally unique identifier. But that in this case, it's basically the path, like the URL of the actual image itself. We want the attachment type, MIME type, image, the date, and then the format CSV, where, like I said before, the default is table. So we want a CSV in this case, and then we want to output it to this CSV file here. And then with there, you can share that file, or you can, put it into like a Excel sheet or something like that. Probably not something you'll use every day, but just something that I've actually had a request for, and it's kind of cool to say like, oh, I can just like do this in 2 seconds versus, how would you get all that stuff manually if you logged into the admin and had to select all these, get the links, because the links were the important part too. They wanted all the links of the images. So. There's also an interactive PHP console, so you can evaluate PHP statements right from the WordPress environment. That's WP shell, that's the command. Here, you can do anything really like that. It's basically just another shell. You can run any like commands you have available in your WordPress installation. It's in the context of your WordPress installation. So you have all your WordPress commands available there too. So here, just as an example, I got the category ID for testing, and then once I got that ID, I used get posts to get a list of all the posts that use that category. There's a lot of different things you can do here, but it looks pretty handy. All right, so the next set of commands are stuff that I use quite a bit. I did a lot of importing, exporting, and migrations and stuff on the previous team I was on. So I feel like I use these multiple times a day. But but the WP export command, this will export your content. So it'll export your posts, in terms, comments, attachments, that kind of thing. One little gotcha though is like if you're running, if you're trying to do an export from your local, like a local installation, and you want to import that into a live installation, those images won't actually pull over because that local host or your local URL isn't actually accessible. So just something to keep in mind. But I don't usually like always do it this way for like a full migration anyway. I use the database approach, which I'll cover next. But here we're exporting all of the content right into the a temp directory, right? It creates a directory, and if you have a larger site, it splits out into like multiple different posts, and then or different files. If you have a really small site, it might just be one file, but I usually just take the directory approach because I usually have more than one file that gets imported, exported. And then you can, again, like we saw previously with listing out the posts, we can get all of the post type, custom post type books. And then, you use the post in flag, and then we can export only the books, custom post types. Importing is pretty straightforward. Just import that this temp here. That's the directory that we used previously, but you can use, if you just have a file and you want to import, like say it's one file, you can use the file. It accepts the directory. Go through all and get all the files in that directory. And then you have the authors flag, which you need to also include. Will create the authors from that CSV. Then you can do skip to just say you don't want to worry about the authors right now. All right, so we got like the database, actual database migrations where we're working with the database. Yeah, so here we're, just pretty much what you might do in like a PHP MyEvent or something, or just right in MySQL. But we're exporting the database and we're using it. We're passing in the add drop table flag. And then the second line, we're doing the same thing, but we're just naming the file. It'll automatically name the file for you, but if you have a specific name you want to use for that SQL output, you can pass that as a file flag. And then you can also just export specific tables that you want. If we just want options for users in this case, there's a lot more you can do with just a few common export commands there. So importing your database. Here's just kind of a set of common steps that I usually follow. So like if I'm just working, say, locally, and I want to pull down what I have in production and develop against the most updated content, you might reset your local database. You don't have to do this. I'm just, if you want to reset your database, that's available, and the yes flag will just it'll just do it. If you don't include the yes flag, it will prompt you to like, are you sure you want to reset your database, right? So if you're like, all right, I definitely want to reset it, you can pass the yes flag, and then run WP-DB import and give it the SQL file that you want to import. And then once you have that, you're going to have a mismatch between the URLs that are used between the two sites. It's probably pretty rare that it'll be exactly the same. So I'm guessing, you'll say you have a production site, your local site may be something .dev or .test or whatever. So you can search your database, right? WP-DB search, and you want to look for that production URL. And then you can replace all of that. You can also do, I didn't post that in here, but the search replace also accepts it's a --dry-run, so dry run. So that will just tell you what it's going to search and replace. It won't actually take the action itself, right? So if you're you just want to say, all right, I'm not sure if I want to do this, what will happen? Pass it the dry run flag, and then you can see, make sure that you want to do that if you just want to be safe, especially if you're doing this on like a production server. A lot of times I did a lot of these things locally, and then I would do that to production as well. But and then again, I would run the WP DB search just to make sure all the production site URLs are gone. There, sometimes I would just do a couple variations of that too. Like I'd find I would, you know, do the protocol, include the protocol, and then not include the protocol. It just depends, you know, like just search your database, make sure that you get rid of all of them. But I use this set of commands like all the time. Maintenance mode, it's pretty cool. So you can just right from the command set it to maintenance mode, and then you'll get that like once you visit the site, it'll just tell, you know, get that little notification. It's in maintenance modes. We're working on it. Come back in a few minutes. I got the link there to it. I haven't really used this that often myself, but it seems really handy, especially, you know, again, if you're working on a production site, you want to make some updates. You know, perfect thing to do. And then the is active will just give you like a you know, like a Boolean value, like if it's active, you know, 1 or 2 or 0 or 1. You know, it's more for like if you want to run it into a bash command, like set a conditional in a shell script and say like, is it active? But and then yeah, if you're like, you know, you're working locally and you just want to get rid of it, you're done, you want to clean up, you can again reset the database, and then you can drop the database and get rid of it, and then you can remove your files, your you know, your entire folder if you want to. Oh, and one thing I actually didn't cover before, but when you're migrating, so like if you want a full migration, you know, I went over, I'll go back to the slides. Like importing, exporting, right? Like I mentioned, this will just give you the content. So you won't really, if you put it into a different site with a different theme, all the stuff that's like stored in your database won't show up, right? So you're just getting the content. You know, I might have a different site with 2020 installed, and I have another site with 2017. I want to move it from one to the other. This isn't really a way to move it one-to-one. You're just going to move the content over. If you really want to move like a one-to-one, that's where you get, you know, I should have explained this, but this is where you want to do the actual database exports. And usually what I'll do is if I want like a full one-to-one, I'll run, you know, I'll export it, and then I'll run the migration stuff. And then I will also pull over the uploads directory. And then like really basically the WP content directory, essentially, you know, you want like all the themes, like this doesn't pull those over. So I just will manually like upload the themes and the you know, uploads and everything. So that'll get you all your images and everything. And that should really be a one-to-one like representation of the one site to the other. Yeah, so yeah, then we got the cleanup, and that's all I got. I have my slides available here. I did not make that URL up for the record. But yeah, I just put them up on Netlify. So if you want to check out the slides, and all these links are interactive in here. So you know, the links to the handbook and everything, they're all, you can just click on those in the slides as well. And I will share this in the meetup post as well.
So Dan, we had a question, and I'll unmute. Rich, unmute yourself and ask your question, because I think you can explain what you're asking better than I can. So go ahead, man. Yeah, is he in here? Rich. Maybe he's not in here anymore. I don't know. But so he was asking, maybe he is. So he was asking like why use WP-CLI versus the Scriptula versus the soft scriptulus in like cPanel or something like that, the installers in cPanel, or using a GUI or something like that, like local, or like what's the advantages versus using something like that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, yeah, so the question is basically why use the shell script versus using the, like just going into the admin and manually taking that approach, if I'm understanding that correctly, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
was asking.
yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, if you're familiar with, using the command line and everything, you're comfortable with that, I think it's much faster and you can do a lot of things really quickly. Like the example that I covered, and maybe he asked this prior to that question, but that like edge case sort of example where I was talking about getting all the image links for, images posted in, within a certain month, or I think I had a range or something. I mean, if you had thousands of posts there, I don't know, I feel like that would take a long time in the GUI. And also then the person below that, instead, if you have a lot of sites, it's great. And especially if you mix it with shell scripting, that's great too. Like, like I said, the installation script, every time I run a, like set up a local WordPress install, especially, just quickly, if I want to fire one up and then, dispose it later for testing, it takes me no time just to run that script. I type sh wp-init.sh and it just fires it off, runs, multiple commands back to back, and then gives me some output that, that I've customized. And, and it just really like seconds. I got a WordPress site and then I want to drop it, just 2 commands, and then I'm done, right? So
Yes.
I think speed is the thing really there, especially if you're comfortable with it. If you're not comfortable with that, it might be maybe it's a good way to start learning some terminal commands and things. So.
Yeah, I know. So I'll give you my use case for it, and the one place that I've used it a lot was updating plugins and themes and stuff like that. Because basically, what I did is I created a little shell script, and batched some commands where it would ask me questions, and
Yeah.
and then I would answer those questions, and it would run through and update all the plugins or and themes and everything at the same time. And I've also used it with importing and exporting databases, and then replacing the main domain, like from a live to local URL, and then I shelled that out to just ask me questions. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and like, like that's like what I covered that too about the, live to local and vice versa. You running the command through running it through WP-CLI, especially with migrations, is I think a huge use case for me, because you can do most of everything you want in one environment and quickly, right? So if I want to do a similar thing without this tool, I would have to go to PHP my admin and get an export of the database, and then and then do the I mean, it's doable, it's fine, but it's just faster for me, right? So like then you get the export of the database from PHP my admin, and then you get the your content folders and all that stuff. But also I noticed that using the if you want the export, if you use the export in the admin, sometimes it times out. I don't always get a complete export, especially if it's on a large site. If I'm talking about the content, like the WP export, where I find it more reliable running it in the WP-CLI. But yeah, I mean, it's not like you're like doing life wrong if you don't use this. It's just a super handy thing, I think.
So I just posted a link to your slides in the chat. So
yeah, and I will share just as an example in the chat. I can also post it along with my slides on the meetup post, but where, let me see if I can quickly find that. Just an example of the like
How do you
shell
switch
script that I
between
have.
slides? That's
What is that?
how do you on your on the website that you did? How do you switch between slides?
Oh, forward and back arrow.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I just quickly put it together. It doesn't have like.
I got you. Cool.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? Any other questions? You can unmute yourself if you want to and ask questions. Does anybody, let me ask this, does anybody in here currently use it?
Yes. And we also write our own comments, add comments to WP-CLI. So that's why, yeah, it's a very, very handy tool to use WordPress, to administrate WordPress, and yeah, it's a awesome tool.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because I didn't cover that at all in here. I wanted to keep it, you know, more on the basic level, but yeah, you can write your own, like your own WP-CLI scripts. And you know, we've done that before for things that have turned out really handy for like complicated migrations where you had to do a lot of, you know, adjustments and things like that from two different environments. Say it was from like, I don't know, something not WordPress to WordPress, let's say, right? Just as an example, but.
So one question to everybody, because I saw a couple of people say they tried it, they tried using it, but it was a little, it might have been a little over their head or not easy enough or whatever. And so what would make this, or what would make you want to use this is my question to everybody. Like, why would you use this tool opposed to just the cPanel? And like, because you showed up to the meetup, so you're interested in it. It shows interest. So why, going out from here, why would you use it is what I'm asking everybody. I guess that's a good question to ask, just to see if anybody has an answer. I didn't know.
This is Charlie. I think one reason that I would want to use it is for repeating processes that happen over and over again, rather than putting in 20 different commands or migrating a site or something like that.
So like putting together a script, like a shell script where you run multiple commands.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's super useful when you do that. I will say this, when I first learned WP-CLI, I thought it was easy for me to use, but running multiple commands, like I thought it took longer. And when I learned how to put scripts together and just run, I created one called WP Update, and pretty much what it did is, after I created the script, is it went through and optimized the whole database, and then it asked me, you know, do you want to update plugins? And I put yes, and it listed out all the plugins that needed to be updated. And then it asked me, are you sure you want to update? And I said yes, because I told it to ask me these questions. And then it updated every plugin, and if there was an error, it told me. And then it asked me for the themes, and then it asked me for WordPress. So, and then it said everything was great. And I even went as far as making everything color coded. And so it really helped. It really helped me. I haven't used it in a while, but when I did use it, it was super fast and super easy. So, and I'll be more than happy to share that script with anybody who wants it, because I have it. So I have a bunch of scripts that I created, and I'll I'll put them in a Git folder or a GitHub folder or whatever, and share them so you can use them. So I don't know how to tell how much time we have left in this Zoom meeting. Does anybody know that?
You'll get a warning.
Oh, okay.
If you,
All right,
so
cool.
if you look on the bottom,
Uh,
well, I'm sharing my screen, so it's at the very bottom. It tells we're at 36 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, it's not.
But if you, do you see it in the upper right hand corner? It's a timer, 36, 39. It's going up. Can you see that? I have it like literally like right in the upper right hand corner of the screen.
I see
of
it
like
says
whoever's speaking.
unpinned video and it says recording video, but I don't see a time. That's weird. Huh.
Yeah, maybe you have an update waiting for you.
Yeah.
You need to enable the timer in your Zoom.
Okay.
So, so I did it. That's why I see it.
Okay. Cool. I probably need to enable it for myself. Cool. So I'll go ahead. If nobody has any questions, for Dan, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys kind of what next meetup's gonna be about, and I'm gonna be doing the meetup. So basically, what it's gonna be about is how to make your client dashboard or client experience inside of WordPress better and more efficient. And so that's what next meetup's going to be about, and it's going to be virtual. So we'll probably use, I'm not sure, can you use the same meetup URL, meeting room URL? This is the first time I've used Zoom for something like this. Does anybody know that?
I think so. If you go to, let me see.
Depends if you have created a meeting with that. So you can create recurring meetings without a timing.
Yes.
So without a
Okay.
time, then it's
This one's
always the
not
same.
recurring because I was just worried. I was just trying to get one created. So, but that's what next meetup's going to be about. And also, so if any of you guys use Elementor, I'm kind of cross promoting here because I started another meetup called with Elementor and through Elementor itself. So they sponsored the whole meetup. And we have a meetup, our first meetup tomorrow, just kind of explaining like what that meetup's going to be about. And I mean, it kind of pretty much explains itself, but I'm going to give topics that we're going to talk about and stuff like that since it's the first meetup. So if you guys want to join that meetup group, that would be awesome because it's about WordPress and it's about Elementor if you use it. So yeah, that's kind of what that meetup's going to be all about. But yeah, if you guys don't have any more questions, since we're close, I guess, to the end of the meeting, what time are we at now? Are we close to
39:24?
Yeah. So if you guys don't have any more questions, I guess this is the end of the meetup, unless you want to hang out in that other room and talk. So if you guys.
Thanks, Cliff.
Yeah, no problem. And just come to the meetup tomorrow. And if you're interested in Elementor. So thanks, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Cliff.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.